Welcome to another episode of Coaching Through Uncertainty. I'm Brianna Hodges, National Faculty for Future Ready Schools. And joining me today is the one and only, my dear friend, Dr. Henry Turner. And he is a principal in Massachusetts. I'm going to ask you, Henry, if you will tell us a little bit about you, where you are, and who you serve.
Sure. Hey, Bree, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me. My name is Henry Turner. I am the principal of Newton North High School in Newton, Massachusetts. We are a school just outside of Boston, large suburban community. Two high schools in our city. We have 2,200 students in our school. We are a truly comprehensive high school where we have career and technical education. And also we are really blessed to have a range of elective programs. We typically have between 400 and 500 students participating in our theater program, for example. So our students are really involved. We have over 100 clubs and activities, and so a very involved student body. So I love the school, and I love that we are ready and moving forward and continuing to get better.
Awesome. Well, I absolutely love how involved your high school is and your community is. That's one of the things I am so continually inspired by your work, Henry, and all the different things that you do. I love that I get to catch up with you and see all of those pieces. That said, I know that one of the things that we often talk about whenever we're catching up is that element of the high school and what that looks like. And, you know, a large high school, I mean, 2,000 students, that's a lot of kids, truly, whenever you're talking about that. And, you know, keeping that engagement going. And I think that one of the things that you do so well as a leader is really keeping that focus on the student and on their experience and from their perspective. And so I want to kind of ask you in these uncertain times, which I will go ahead and give that caveat that if there are ever really certain times in high school, I'm not sure that actually exists. So I do feel like uncertainty is kind of in your wheelhouse as a high school principal. That's something that you're dealing with a lot. But in these times right now, how are you finding success with keeping your student body engaged and moving into this truly focused virtual environment and keeping that engagement, keeping your students still locked in and checked in with your teachers? How's that working? How's that going for you?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I mean, we've been, we could say that we've been in crisis mode for the last 4 years. But all of the crises are constantly changing, but certainly we're in our most significant crisis right now. The thing that I would say in terms of engagement is that you need to know where your student energy is and how to support it when it's in line, especially when it's in line with the objectives of making sure your school grows and improves. And so, for example, my first year in September, is that we had a group of students driving around waving the Confederate flag. And that moment, a video of it went viral, and that moment, we worked with the students who were angered by that and supported them in demonstrating their voice and having a student protest and student rally, and doing it in a way that it was safe but also supportive of the student voice. And I think that I'm fortunate that when I took this job, I was in a school that supported the student voice, and I think that we've continued to be able to do that all along. And so, thinking about this past spring, we were able to foster our relationships with our students, and even through a distance, because we had those strong relationships with them, and support their activism. And so a cultural part of our school is that we have these cultural assemblies, a day for Gay Straight Alliance, day for our Black student organization, in all of our groups. We have assemblies, we have these days all throughout the year. And so probably the first or second week of quarantine, I spoke with a couple of advisors and said, we absolutely need to figure out a way to have our assemblies that we were going to miss in the spring. One was our To Be Glad Day, which supports our LGBTQ community, and the other one was our day supporting our Middle East students from the Middle East. And so the advisors worked with the club leaders and put on two fantastic days. And also, I think what a lot of groups are learning is that there's a lot more access to speakers through Zoom. And so we brought in some national renowned speakers, and it brought a sense of normalcy to our school, but also supported the student voice. During that time, we also had two incidents at our school, an incident at our sister school, of some racist Zoom bombing. And in response, our student groups created some assemblies to demonstrate against that hate, to talk about the impact that COVID is having on communities of color. Again, we were right there, and it just became it's a part of our culture now that we know how to proactively talk about how proactively support our student voice, and also when they feel like they've been attacked or been hurt, how to make sure that they feel like their voice is being heard.
That's incredible. I think that, you're explaining that student voice is that opportunity, especially in this day and age where we're constantly, we're seeing everything that's happening in the world, through the screen that we are also using to connect with our students. And so, seeing those news flashes come along, it's hard to hide from all the different, all the different challenges that are out there, and the news and the happenings and the crisis and every different element that's coming in, and keeping that focus on these students who are really trying to process it. As adults, we're struggling with words and struggling with emotions and trying to come into it, but you don't ever forget that about those students. I think, you and I had a conversation in the spring, moving into the summer, actually, right after George Floyd's murder, and I'll never forget that you were the first principal that I'd talked with that said, I'm having meetings with our students, and so often we have those conversations with our faculty, but extending that into these students, I think, is just so important. And the phrase that sticks in my mind was you sharing with me that how important it was to help them process this and just give them that space to talk through, what they're feeling. And that was so powerful to me. I would love to share some of your wisdom, if if you can, with us about feeling. I love that you keep referring to this as helping students find their voice and find their place within activism. And I'd love for you to share a little bit around that and your thoughts on that of you're not trying to steer students into a political choice, but you're also, what you've always shared with is trying to provide that place and that space for them to process. So I'd love for you to share your thoughts around that.
Yeah, we have a line in our district that we talk about regularly, which is our job is not to teach students what to think, but to be able to think. And so we want our students to be able to, whatever their passion is, to be able to voice it. And sometimes that voice is anger. And I think that I learned early on as an educator is that students work well with you when they feel like you are respecting them. They feel like high school students when they feel like they're being treated like adults. And so, and we've got to respect their anger, and we need to not shy away from it. And so, absolutely, when after the killing of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, when those were happening, as adults, we were sad, we were hurt, we were upset. And also we knew that our students were upset, we were hurt. So I think that the way in which you demonstrate your support for your students is by acknowledging that anger and that sadness, and also by demonstrating it. And I think that's something we've learned as adults in the school, is that, there have been times when we have not talked about these national incidents happening in our classroom, and our students see that as acceptance. and when we may be really grieving inside. And so it's something that we've talked a lot about this summer is making sure that our students know when these hate incidents happen, for example, is that we tell them that we're really upset by it, so that they know that we're grieving with them. Um, we did a week of silence in honor of George Floyd. We offered Zoom moments of silence. I think that was a demonstration of our anger and sadness. There was a family of color in which the dad was stopped by the police in our community at gunpoint. We invited them to join us. We Our students wanted to lead a protest in support of Black Lives Matter. We gave them the place to be able to have that conversation. We supported them in being able to march through the city, worked with the police, worked with the mayor's office, supported them while it was still their plan to organize. And this is where they learn the skills, right? This is like where it's real learning, and we support their learning with their passion. This is where it's student-centered learning. They're learning how to organize, how to communicate, and we gave them the place to be able to have the end of the protest on our football field. I marched with them. So like the idea is that you have to be authentic in this work, and also supporting them is not just giving them the platform, but it's making sure that they learn through it and that they're successful through it. And I think that when there are times when they feel like, as the adult, is that I'm making decisions that they disagree with. There's also a level of respect that they also know that I'm also trying to make, I'm trying to get to the same goal as they, even though they may feel like the school is making a decision that is different than what they would want. And we're able to talk about it. We're able to have that level of respect, which I think goes a long way in your relationships with your students. And also, I think it's a way to support the classroom, because I think that when we teach in that same manner, is understanding where our students are, understanding where their energies are, and giving them the platforms, is that we're going to see them grow, we're going to see them learn, we're going to address the gaps that we're really passionate about, right? That's culture responsive teaching in a lot of ways. And I think that we need to demonstrate it as a school, and so that we can start thinking through what it looks like in the classroom.
Awesome. So let's kind of transition with that, because I know, it's not always just in the classroom. In order to have that be successful in the classroom, we also have to model and demonstrate that with our faculty. And you alluded to a lot of the work that's been done this summer. I know this isn't something that just started this summer for you. This has been a huge focus for you professionally as an administrator throughout your terms with North Newton, as well as prior to that. But can you share with us, again, I know with my work at high school, where a lot of times it's very difficult to get that change with our practice at high school, because we get very focused in what works well, and we like to see that success. And you guys are a super, super successful high school as well. But how are you helping faculty kind of navigate what can sometimes very much seem like separate entities, but you're really, how you've explained that with students of being that authentic and vulnerable leader that kind of embraces all of those elements. Are you doing a similar, how's that working with your faculty, with your taller learners? Are you kind of embracing that, helping them pull it in together so that they're not seeing separate or competing initiatives or goals? What's that looking like for you?
So so in a large high school like ours, high school people certainly are not known for their adaptation to change. And we like to, and we're so big and complex that, folks really, there's nuances to how they work with students, and they're very protective of that. And so the learning for adults needs to be learner-centered as well. And so I would say that we've started, really in my first year in terms of working with our leadership team So I have 16 members of our leadership team, and making sure that those meetings are learner centered. And I think, certainly I'm I was transitioning from to a really effective leadership prior to me, and being able to just kind of carry that energy along. But I think that over the last couple of years, what I've seen with my leadership team is them really buying into the idea of culturally responsive instruction, around making sure that students are engaged, thinking critically, problem solving, and making sure that to see what that thing looks like in our classroom. And the closer we can get to the classroom, the more we're going to see changes in the classroom. And so I think the fact that our department heads really, they saw the potential in the work that we were doing, and they started to buy into it, to the point that it was less about sort of dictation and more about them dictating what they wanted, right? And then them sort of thinking through, how do they make sure that they're thinking about the diversity within their departments. Some of our departments are 40 teachers. And so, and it's a slow process, and it's making sure that you're using the same language on a repetitive basis, and making sure that the communication is authentic and also consistent. And I think that where we are as a school, or where we were, the start of last year particularly, is realizing that the power of our conversations is not in our formal messages or our formal meetings, but in our daily conversations, right? And so we started thinking about, how do we make sure that those daily conversations that we have with people are another way to move the needle, to move the conversation, to move people, how people are thinking about the work. How are we listening and realizing where they need support? How are we providing professional development where they professional learning opportunities where they need that support? And so I think without a doubt, our teachers feel like they still own their classrooms. They still own what they're doing with students. And also they feel like they see the challenge, and many of them see the message of where we were asking them to sort of adapt and to change. And I would say that COVID certainly puts a lot more pressure to adapt and to change. And so we're trying to balance that, so that we're not moving so quickly that we start losing students, but that we are seeing the potential in some of the changes we're making right now as ways to improve for the long haul, not just for the current moment. And so again, our message for COVID has been the same as it was the beginning of last year, which is utilizing culturally responsive teaching practices, thinking about response to intervention, and making sure that we're providing those supports, incorporating universal design for learning, and seeing the connection between universal design for learning and anti-racist teaching practices, that it's about how do you know your students, and making sure that you're designing your curriculum and your learning opportunities for students so that it's driven by what their specific needs are. And how do we check for understanding? How do we assess them? Conversation we're having now is, what does grading look like in this new environment, right? All of them are connected, and we've been, I think, fortunate to be able to use anti-racist practices as like our core way of thinking through things, to our lens for discussions, so that when they come up, we're able to have sort of a consistent conversation where we know where our goal is. And so, yeah, I think that we're making a lot of progress, because we've kept this culture of supporting teacher voice and what they need, and also challenging them so that they're thinking through it, they feel like they have ownership, and also it's modeling the kind of learning that we want our students doing in the classrooms.
I'm hearing lots of words around adaptation and perspective and lens, and I think that that really kind of encapsulates what you're saying. It's not a here is our here's our lockstep scope and sequence. It's how can we take this and really customize it and personalize it for every learning opportunity and for each learner, whether it's from that teacher lens of how can we all collaborate together and create some of those ideas in the classroom, or for our students, and continually providing that voice. It reminds me so much of phrases from my growing up, right, where it was like, you get to have a voice. You might not necessarily, I might not agree, and we might not do what it is that you want to do, but you get to talk to us about it, as long as it's in a civil conversation and you can make your ideas heard. Then decisions are going to come from that, but you are responsible for being a part of that informed decision by providing your insight and your mindset. And I think that that's an incredible model to provide for our students and to provide for our teachers. So
sorry.
No, keep going.
No, I was going to say that I think we know we're having the right conversation when the conversation is about what our students need, not what colleges are saying students need, or what all these external forces, but what do our students need now? And I feel like we're just in a really great place and I think that's what teachers naturally want to talk about. And so I think that we're in a really good place as a school that we're focusing on that. And again, thinking through this anti-racist lens, we're right now talking about being a school that's about learning, and not a school that's about sorting. And high schools are we've been for a long time about sorting students, whether it's rank, GPA, levels, and that's just, we feel like that's inherent in our core, and then we wonder why we don't narrow the gaps to the point that they should be. We may narrow them on the fringes, but we're not narrowing them. We're not getting rid of those gaps. And so that's work on us as adults. So I think, again, it goes back to we know the energy to learn, to want to learn, is there for our students. And so moving away from being a school that sorts students and one that is about student learning, we need to know who our kids are and what their needs are in order to be able to be that kind of school.
Yeah. And I love that you help that by having those intersectionalities, right? Like, instead of, like you were saying, sorting it where, athlete, or, honors track, or, and so much of that becomes that word or, and instead looking at that intersection of, interest, of passion, of, content, all of those elements to help our students really learn that skill of, understanding how to articulate their ideas, how to articulate their emotions and their frustrations. And that's a huge thing that we as a whole in education have not necessarily focused on a lot. And I think, we're seeing some of that come to light with our current challenges of people aren't sure how to say what's on their heart and how this feels. So with that, I do want to ask you a couple questions, kind of rapid style here, of given these uncertainties and given all of this, what is something that you can share with us that keeps you focused and lets you come back, even when, as educators, we like to have answers. We like to be able to lead, in a certain direction, knowing that we are confident that it's the right direction. When we're not sure about what's going on, how are you finding the words or the belief system to keep coming back with your faculty and leading that way?
Yeah, I think I've found the electronic communication really challenging in this moment, and I think that when I see that when I see a lot of the anxiety popping up among our parents, is around, what are the changes that we're making? How are we supporting their kids best? What I always come back to is that these are the same teachers. This is a message I say to parents. These are the same teachers and counselors that loved and supported your kids in September of 2019 as they are in March of 2020, as they are in September of 2020. That these are the same exact people, and that, there was a lot of trust that these educators were, doing everything they possibly could to make sure that your kids thrived pre-COVID, and they are absolutely doing that now. And that's what I find comfort in, is that, even though that I'm not able to see their physical beings, is to keep remembering that these are the same exact people that you loved and worked with when we were able to see each other.
Fantastic. Okay, last question. As one of our nation's top instructional leaders, hands down, fight me on that one. I challenge you for sure. Dr. Henry Turner is up there in the game. You and I
might challenge you on that one.
I'll take you on. It'll be fine. But you and I also, we're big sports fans, former athletes, coaches, all of that. We talk through a lot of these pieces. So you and I are both familiar with the term playbook. And with that, I know you have your go-to practices. I know you have your go-to plays. What is something that you can share with the rest of us that we can maybe pull into our own playbook that is a focus for you this year, or has been a proven strategy in the past, that just a little word of wisdom that we can pull and shove into our own playbook?
Okay. Well, thank you for that very nice compliment. I would say that I think it goes to my last comment that I'm really struggling with, like, electronic communication, like email. And so I think that when there is, and what I found, because I'm texting more, emailing more, is that some of that communication that you got just in those sort of small conversations you'd have in the building are being lost. To me, the strategy is, instead of having back and forth emails, that you pick up the phone or you set up a Zoom call and you have a 15, 20-minute conversation, just so that you can square those things away. Don't get into the long back and forth emails. And I think that that's going to maintain our relationships through all of this.
I love that. You heard it here, guys. Don't be afraid to flip that camera on. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Have that conversation, because it will solidify, it will reinforce, it will establish that relationship. And that's what we're all after here, especially when we're talking about these learner-centered environments, which is school. That's what this is all about. So thank you so much for having this conversation with us today, Henry. I hope you guys got so much to add to your playbook. I know that I did. And for everybody out there, Henry, thank you for joining us. For everybody out there that's coaching through uncertainty, please keep it up. We're all in your corner, and we can't wait to see you guys next time. So thank you very much.
A lot of fun. Thank you.
Coaching Through Uncertainty is a Future Ready Schools podcast series that explores the new shifts in teaching and learning that are happening right now. Future Ready instructional leaders, coaches, and teachers are navigating challenges that were theoretical, optional, or barely feasible only last year, but have now become full-blown, full-speed, in-the-moment realities. Coaching Through Uncertainty is hosted by me, Brianna Hodges, National Faculty for Future Ready Schools. In each episode, we'll connect with Future Ready coaches on a mission to inspire, engage, and amplify innovative professional practice. We'll hear from the nation's top instructional leaders as they share their experience, expertise, and advice to reimagine teaching and learning to better suit today's learners with tomorrow's tools. You can subscribe and listen to Coaching Through Uncertainty wherever you get your podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Coaching Through Uncertainty and Future Ready Schools are projects of the Alliance for Excellent Education. Together we're better. Together we're future ready.